Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Life Shift podcast. I am here with a new connection, Pamela. Hi, Pamela.
Hello. Great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me. You are my first Twitter guest.
Yeah, how fun. You just never
I
know, do you?
I just never know. I had a guest where I was talking to about kind of the things in podcasting that we want to do and try out. And she was like, "You should try Twitter. I'm trying to get more in there." And I was like, Twitter? I don't know. So I have been in there and just kind of playing around and talking to people. I've really curated my list to a smaller, mostly podcasters or mostly people interested in podcasting to keep it kind of nice and tight for me.
Yeah, clean.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so we connected because I was just curious if, with my podcast being the Life Shift podcast, I was
Mhm.
curious if other people have ever sat down and thought about the one moment that changed everything in their life, that one thing that shifted
Yeah.
everything. And I guess it made you think because you responded.
Yeah. I have so many things that happened in my life that were life shifts for me, but I answered to you and said the very first thing that came to mind was a time that I got on a bus on a 3-day ride across the country with a one-way ticket. Um, just moving as a last ditch effort. I was in a bad mental state and I was suicidal, and it was just kind of like, okay, I'm going to do this. And I was just numb, and I just sold everything or got rid of everything, got on a bus, moved across the country. And of course, how can that not be life
Right.
shifting?
Right. Yeah. Well, since you let the cat out of the bag early, which is good. I mean, I think people are going to be like curious of how you got to this point.
Yeah.
So why don't we, or why don't you paint kind of a picture of what your life was like as far back as you want to go that brings us
Okay.
to this moment in which you needed to get that one-way ticket and get rid
Yeah.
and like burn everything to get to where
Yeah.
you needed to go.
Yeah. So I have lived through a life of trauma from childhood and on to adulthood, just one thing after the other. And had just divorced my second husband, who was abusive in every way.
Mm,
And the first husband was also abusive, but just sort of verbally and emotionally. And I like to say that I kind of, jumped out of the frying pan and into the fire, from the first marriage to the second marriage. I finally left that second marriage, and I thought, oh, this is going to be good now. Now everything will be
now.
great. Yeah. Now I can live my life. I'm independent. I'm free. I got away from him, and I didn't realize that the whole childhood leading up to that point was going to crash down on me. I
Mm.
didn't realize that it was all connected. At that moment, I didn't realize. But then I started having nightmares. I started having, like night terrors and just being really fearful and depressed. And I couldn't get out of that. I didn't understand where that was coming from. I
Right.
thought everything's going to be great now, you know?
Yeah.
And so it was a year I was living on my own mentally, just going down, down, down mentally.
Mm.
And so then there was a friend who was talking about moving to California and said, maybe that's what you want to do. And, just start over. And I was like, I don't know. I can't imagine that I'd be able to do that. And so I started looking into it. And 2 weeks later, 2 weeks later, I was on the bus. I mean, I was at a point of, I was thinking of ways for suicide. I
Mm.
didn't think that, I was going to get better. I saw myself sinking deeper and deeper. And I thought, why not? And
Was there something? Well, okay, so let's back up a little
yeah,
bit.
yeah,
I don't want to have you expose anything you don't want to,
yeah,
but I think, have a lot of people have experienced childhood trauma in a
right.
variety of ways. And I think that many people are not given tools as we grow up, and
Right.
especially like your generation, my generation. I don't know what generation you're in, but I'm assuming that we're in similar ones. But I feel like we weren't given the tools to address these, or our tools were, here is the broom, here is the rug, sweep
Sweep
them
it under,
under,
right.
and tomorrow might be better. And we kind of
Hmm.
just try to carry on with that backpack of burden. Do you
Yeah.
think that your first marriage was a product of finding something that was connected to your childhood trauma, like without intentionally doing it?
Absolutely. I think that I was really looking for that family unit. I had never had that growing up. And speaking of having tools, being taught tools, I was neglected. I didn't have
Mm,
my parents around. I was very alone a lot of the time. We moved a lot. We lived in poverty. So I had no parental guidance. I had no kind of parental interaction, or, wasn't taught very much about anything. And so I ended up as a teen mother,
mm,
and from there, my son was getting about, I don't know if he was between 3 and 5 years old. And I started thinking about, I was already working in daycare and doing pretty well on my own with him as a single teen mother. And I was thinking I wanted to have another baby, have a sibling for him, and sort of grow up a little bit more. I was ready for
mm-hmm,
adulthood and I wanted to have that family unit. So I started looking for somebody that was like, I wouldn't date um, somebody that wasn't like husband material.
You had a
And
checklist.
yeah, yeah. So, so that's what happened. And I think that when you are in a state of when you don't have self confidence, when you don't know yourself, I think that you attract people that are more controlling
Mm,
just because they're able to. And, just some sort of the law of attraction kind of brings those people into your life because you emit that kind of vibration or energy. Um, that you can be sort of controlled, or that you don't have
mm,
the self confidence to stand up for yourself in that. So,
yeah.
definitely, to get back to your question, definitely my childhood led up to that first marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even, even in that story of, your child is a certain age and now you want to create a family
Yeah.
for your child, because probably because you didn't have that and you wanted to give your child everything that you didn't have,
Right.
probably in spite of the fact that you didn't know how,
Right. And I
right?
didn't even realize that I didn't know how. Like at that time, I did
Right.
not realize that the whole childhood, you know,
Right.
led up
Yeah.
to that.
You were
Yeah.
existing. You were
Hmm.
you were trying to do the things, and I think a lot of that, I think a lot of people can relate to kind of just going through life filling gaps that we didn't know we had, just by a
Yeah.
product of the steps that we're taking that we think are forward,
Right.
and maybe they were, maybe finding your first husband was the step that you needed to get to this version of you, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it wasn't a healthy one, but maybe it was healthy in the long run to
Yeah,
know.
I totally believe that, that everything we do in life, everything that has brought me to where I am right now,
Hmm.
couldn't have happened without everything that I've been through. And I know that that's kind of common, and a lot of people say that, but it's so true. Just a few years back, probably 5, 6 years back, I would have had so many regrets. There's so many things I would have said that I wish this didn't happen. I wish this didn't happen. But now I'm at a place that I can say, well, I had to go through that to get
Right.
to where I'm at now. And so I don't regret any of it. I don't wish any of it didn't happen. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's hard, and I think a lot. I was talking to someone earlier today about trauma and about
hmm,
how in that moment, first of all, you just don't think that you'll ever get out of this particular trauma,
oh
and you
yeah,
can't imagine that anyone else is facing what you're facing, and you feel very alone. So I'm imagining a lot of those moments in your childhood kind of, you put them aside when you had a child and you were trying to take care of this child. Then you were trying to find protection, I guess, maybe in a marriage, or something that kept you feeling, less traumatized. But then
Yeah.
you found that space that was also traumatizing, and then try
Yeah.
to get out of that one into the
Right.
fire.
Right. Right. Yeah, I don't think that you realize at the time that you're trying to create something from the trauma, something that you were missing. You don't
Hmm.
realize that at the time. And you don't have the tools to know what a good relationship is, to know how to,
Right,
have
because
a
you had no
be your
modeling.
right, right, to play your part. I don't want to sit here and, and bad talk my ex-husbands, but
Mm-mm.
it's I played a role in those relationships too.
Hmm.
And you have to learn to, you learn as you go, and learning to stand up for yourself and what you will and won't accept. And just learning how to collaborate, sort of, or just to have a relationship and to raise children together and stuff. There's so much that goes into
Hmm.
your childhood, and like you said, modeling, whether it is, I know your story of losing your mother, and you know even if it's grandparents or other people, aunts and uncles, or step parents, if you have that, to look to as what the relationship is supposed to be in a good marriage, then that's just as good as having a good family unit when you're young with your biological mother and father.
Oh, for sure.
So
Yeah, it
yeah.
was interesting. I think I to your point of finding, or the trauma piece, and like seeking out things but not understanding. I
Yeah.
think an example for me is very much, when my mom died, I sought any female figure to be that mother figure, whether that was
Yeah.
my third grade teacher that I was in touch with for many, many years after, or
Yeah.
my grandmother took over the role, or my friends' mothers. I got
Yeah.
really close to them. And it wasn't until maybe recently where I realized, wow, I was really seeking the thing that I felt was missing in
Yeah.
my life. And so I guess in my case, that was a good thing for
Yeah.
me. It didn't create more trauma, I guess is another
Right.
way of saying that. So, when you left your second husband, you said that you were in just such a state, like a depressive state, a suicidal
Yeah.
ideation. Did you
Yeah.
have those feelings prior to that, or was that like something new when you were on your own?
Yeah, that was new. That was new
Yeah.
for me because my mother, so I lost a sibling when I was a young teen. And so my mother had already been through losing a child. And I never thought of, I never had suicidal thoughts before that time. But at that time, one of the things that helped me was I didn't want to put my mother through that again. And it wasn't, a lot of people say it's my children that have kept me here because I wanted to be around for them. But I was
Hmm.
feeling like they'd be better off without me. But yeah, that was the first time because I felt so out of control. I could feel myself, you know, sinking deeper and deeper, and not having the tools, or not having people that I knew that I could reach out to. Um, I had tried to find counseling just on my own, counseling or therapy, and I just wasn't able to get to that point. It was like everything that I could, everything I can do just to get out of bed and get myself to drive to these places, and, and ask for help. I even went to the emergency room, and you would think that they would have, I don't think I said I was suicidal.
Hmm.
I think I was just saying I'm so anxious and I just need help. I can't really take care of myself so much.
Right.
I knew I wasn't safe alone, not just because I was suicidal, but I, like, I would just was forgetting to eat, and
Mm.
wasn't able to work, and just really, really down. Um, so yeah, I just felt myself getting deeper and deeper, not having this a way out of it.
Yeah.
So that's where I started thinking of suicide, and started thinking seriously, trying to make a plan. How am I going to do this? What's the best way to do this?
It's, I mean, I'm sorry that you went through those periods of your life. And I know you said that, it brought you to where you are now, but in
Yeah.
that moment, it's so hard. And what struck me, and it's so interesting that you actually went to the emergency room and asked for
Yeah.
help.
Yeah.
And what's interesting to me is I wonder if not enough people ask for help, so they weren't sure what to do, in a sense
Yeah.
that like
They
nobody.
had the they had sent me to the we in that town. They had a mental health center. They sent
Mm,
me there. And when I went there, I had to wait for a long time, which was really hard.
right.
And I had to fill out a bunch of paperwork, and that was really hard. And someone came over, because I had been sitting there for hours, waiting, and then had the paper. Someone came over to help me with the paperwork, and then when I left, then they sent me on my way, that they'll get
Mm,
back to me after the paperwork and everything. And I went back to my car, and it's hard to drive. Even, I mean, every little thing you do is so hard. And after that was a traumatic experience just in itself. I had went to the
yeah.
emergency room, then I went to this mental health center. I was in there for hours. Went back to my car and just was crying and sobbing, and just waiting until I can bring myself together enough to drive home safely.
Yeah.
You know, um,
What year? Around what year was this?
so this is um, 2014 or 15.
I was hoping you were going to say like in the
I know.
90s or
80s or
something.
90s. I know, it sounds like it, right? Yeah.
It makes me so sad. And I talk to so many people. You've been listening to some of these episodes, and
Mm-hmm.
so much of our conversation is about mental health and taking care of
Right.
ourselves. And to hear that society and the structures that we're
Yeah.
given make it really hard to
Yeah.
take care of ourselves, because you know what, mental health, you can say that word and sure, we can say, oh, I'll have a spa day. That's not what it's about. Like,
Right.
we
Right.
might need real help. There's something
Mm-hmm.
that we can't do, and if we're strong enough, like you're so strong to go to seek help, like that's really hard when you're in such
Yeah.
despair, and to not get it,
Yeah.
it just blows my mind that
Yeah.
that the structure is so hard. I mean, and I was hoping you were going to say the 90s or something where
I
it wasn't
know.
so recent.
Yeah.
That being said, I hope even in the last, I want to say the last like 5 years or
Yeah.
10 years, I feel like we're getting better. I think people
I think
are
so too.
talking about it more. I think it's less taboo, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But just hearing that story and knowing it was only like 8 years ago,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
so what do you think? I mean, I don't want to get really dark here, but what kept you from, you know, creating that plan and moving forward in that dark space?
Well, I still was concerned for my mother.
Mm,
I still was, aware enough that I didn't want to, um, upset her that much more. Um, I also, just I was looking for help. I couldn't get it, and that's when it got really serious. The feeling of just wanting to end it. And I
yeah.
think I was still in that space when this friend said to me,
Mm,
maybe you just need to get out of here and go somewhere far away and start fresh somewhere. Because I was still in the town where I had divorced my abusive husband. And part of the fear, because I was so fearful, and I thought that a lot of that was worried about him finding me.
mm.
Um, I
If you
don't
left?
think, no, if I staying there.
Oh, okay.
So leaving and going somewhere far away where he didn't know where I was might be helpful.
Mm,
But I don't think that that was really the fear, but that's what I was thinking it was.
Yeah. Do you,
So,
what was it about like your friend just saying that off the cuff that like maybe planted a seed in your head? Was there something special about that moment?
hmm, that's a real life shift, isn't it?
I mean,
when
it,
they said when they said that, I think it was just a last ditch effort, a way to avoid, you know, suicide.
right.
It was just
Well, because
another.
I feel like if it was a different time, if it was a week or
Mhm.
two before that and that friend said something, do you think there was something about that moment that was like, oh, like you had this glimmer of hope of some sort?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it was at a point that I felt hopeless. I was at the
Mhm.
very last, I was hopeless. It was at the very last bit of effort to try to save myself,
Mm.
and I was at a loss. I felt hopeless, and so there it was. Well, maybe I could. I At first I thought it was ridiculous. At first
Mhm.
I thought, yeah, right, like I'm really just going to be able to pick up and go somewhere I've never been. I don't know. And so then I started looking into it, which
Mhm.
is surprising to even me that I even just started looking into
Right.
it. So I was in a lease, I was renting a little house, and I said to my landlord, which I was already late on my rent. Um, so I said to my landlord, I may be moving before the lease is up. Just to give you a heads up, I wanted to be. I was in constant contact with them, and they were really great. They knew my situation, um, so I just was really communicating with them. And I said I may be leaving the state, and just wanted you to know. I'll let you know if I'm going to or how this works out. Just wanted to tell you. And so then they said, "Well, we were thinking of selling the house anyway. Can you be out in 2 weeks?"
Hmm.
I think that was the thing that made me. And then I said, I'll try.
I mean, I know we started this saying that your shift was jumping on that bus, but it sounds like the shift might have come a little bit sooner, in these, because I know, having gone through depression, and I,
Hmm.
fortunately for myself, have not been as far down the road as you were, but I know how, I don't want to say the word, I feel like it's easier to stay in that space, right? In that
Right.
mental space. For me, it was much easier to stay than it was to work my way out of wherever I was at that
Yeah.
particular moment. But to hear your story and to know that someone like threw like a little like a diamond in like
Yeah.
in the mess to kind of wait a second, there's a light coming from
From
somewhere,
somewhere. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Where is
And
that
then
shimmer? Yeah.
right, and then you're like, oh wait, okay, so that is a possibility. Now I'm gonna
Yeah.
do a little bit of work, and now I'm gonna
Yes.
actually tell someone else that I might be leaving,
Mm-hmm.
because maybe your brain was like, well, maybe they'll tell me that I can't and I
Mm.
have to stay, right? Like a little bit of that, oh, there's a comfort, right? But now you got like you're can you be out in 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Did that light the fire? Did you kind of weirdly get excited about that?
I was scared. When they
Mm,
said that, I thought, oh my gosh. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach, you
mm,
know?
okay,
I thought, how can you move in 2 weeks, with just 2 week notice? I mean, how can you just go from I have a lease that has a few months left to out in 2 weeks? I mean, as a child, we were evicted a couple times, and I know I wasn't being evicted, but I think that sort of triggered a little bit of that kind of a
okay,
thing. And so my first thought was, figuring out how I'm going to get to California, where I'm going to actually get off the bus and go to the moment
right,
I'm there. And then what about my stuff? I had already lost a lot of my stuff in the divorce. But I still had accumulated, like I bought furniture. It was all used and everything, but I filled up this house. I bought
mm-hmm,
furniture. I had clothes, of course. And, so I had stuff. We all have stuff. So
Hmm.
so I
And
had to figure
stuff
out
is the key word.
yeah. I had to figure out how to get rid of that and what I needed to bring with me and how I was going to get there. And so it gave me a task to occupy my mind and
Yeah.
to do something productive. And it felt good doing that. And it felt like I had saved myself, or that saved me.
Yeah.
And
Did
yeah.
it give you purpose?
Yeah, well, it gave me hope. It gave me
Hope.
some hope. Like you said, looking around for that light, like, oh, there's a light somewhere. It gave me a little hope when I was at the very, there was no
Right.
hope whatsoever at that
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
You were on the last rung of that ladder,
Yeah.
holding on. Someone was like, "Oh, let me lift you up a little bit." Even though it was
Yeah.
scary,
Yeah.
you know, the fact that it gave you like a task, it gave you
Yeah.
something to, because there's something to be said when you're only alone with your thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
everything is a lot darker. If you have
Mm-hmm.
nothing to do, did it help you stop feeling as
Yeah.
much despair?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I had something to do and I felt very, before that time, I wasn't sure of myself as far as am I okay? I knew I wasn't okay, but living alone, you feel like I don't know that I'm really not worse off than I feel like I am.
Mm,
If that makes sense. Like you don't trust your own, how mentally ill am I? Should I be living alone, I really thought that I'd be going into the hospital or something. Um, I knew that I wasn't well, but I really worried about myself. My grandmother had schizophrenia, and just I was just so concerned with totally losing myself if I wasn't, going to, you know, going to go through with suicide. I was worried
right.
about my mental state. So that gave me something to do and to realize that I could do something. I could
Mm,
help myself.
yeah.
Like I'm looking up for jobs in California. I'm looking up for, a place to stay. I'm looking up at the bus schedules. It's like, oh, I'm able to do something, something
Yeah.
worthwhile for myself, even. And it gave me a lot of hope. Yeah.
Yeah. We're growing up, did you feel a sense of independence? Like, were you always independent, or were you more like seeking someone else needed to help you in some capacity?
I grew up, I would say, pretty numb. I was not independent. I was alone a lot. We were hungry a lot. I hid a lot, which sounds very strange to say, but I
Hmm.
hid. Um, I hid out in my closet. I
Oh,
hid
you
up in the
actually like physically
physically
hid.
hid. Yeah,
Okay.
I hid away in a tree, looking. I didn't go to school, and I hid in the tree, and I'd watch the schoolyard from the tree, and just wanted to disappear, I guess.
Hmm.
And
Blend in
it's
with the
yeah, well, not
surroundings,
not blend in as much as well, blend in with the
with the
surroundings, but
surroundings,
not
right?
people. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so we were in a rented house, and people were coming through to like an open house, and I wasn't in school. I was supposed to be in school, and we knew these people were coming. And talking about blending in with your surroundings, and this is going to sound very strange, but I was only 9 or 10 years old, and I hid in the laundry. And I tried to I laid in the laundry very still while they were walking through, and I put clothes like on me so I would look like part of the clothes. So talking about blending in with your,
You're
that's
like
exactly
ET.
like ET. Yes. I
Yeah.
never thought of that. That's exactly. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it I mean, sure, it's not something that everyone would say, but I think it probably explains a lot of your
Yeah.
trauma response as a
Yeah.
kid that doesn't have the tools to do anything. So I don't
Yeah.
necessarily think it's strange. And part of the question relates to wondering if you were like if this new moment of kind of planning out what could be was your
Yeah.
first taste of really feeling independent and
Yes.
determining your path and feeling like, oh,
Yeah.
I have control?
Yeah. Yeah, because throughout my whole childhood, no control.
Yeah,
Nothing, everything, yeah, just had to stay alive, basically. My first marriage, I was, talked down to, I was, controlled, there was gaslighting, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, all of that. Second marriage, even worse,
yeah,
physical abuse, everything. He was a alcoholic and a drug addict, and I didn't know that when I first married him. Um, but so getting out of that, so that's my whole life. I felt like I had no control over my life, and I couldn't be me. I couldn't live my own life. I didn't even know me. Like, just
right.
the past few years, I've come to really start to know myself, and starting all these new things in my life, and it's just been so amazing. I'm in the mid 50s, and here I am finding myself, and getting my own life back.
Yeah,
And so yeah, so that was the first time that I felt a little bit in control of
yeah.
my own path ahead of me. Yeah.
Did you don't have to answer this, but in those other relationships, was that, as bad as it was that a comfortable space for you? Like, did did that
Mm.
feel, I'm trying to think about, like, to my comment before about depression and how it kind of feels comfortable, even though it's not a safe space to be. Like, it feels like that warm blanket. Like, did you feel like that was your space and you were supposed to be there, and then all of a sudden you were in this space where you weren't controlled anymore?
I think that I felt it wasn't comfortable. It was just I didn't know how to take control of my own life. I didn't know what it felt like to know myself and know what I even wanted,
Yeah. But
and
did you have
to
the drive to make you think that in those moments? Like, did you feel like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. I need to take a new control over it?
um you mean for when I was getting on the bus and making
No,
those
when you're
plans,
when
or
you're in those relationships, and you said you didn't really know yourself, did you know that you should know?
I no, I didn't know how to be me. I didn't know
Okay.
that other people
So
knew
this
how
was
to be
really,
themselves. Yeah.
yeah. So this
Yeah.
this like your friend, was it a normal conversation that you regularly had with your friend that they brought it up, or was it just like some kind of spur of the moment to
Well,
go to California?
so he had another friend, because he was in the same kind of situation I was. And
Mm,
this was like one of the friends that was somebody that we would help each other through our anxiety and our depression. And so there's lots of phone calls, more so, but sometimes we'd go for walks and stuff like that. So somebody suggested that to him.
mm,
So he had a friend in California. Now, he never came to California. So, but he had a friend in California that said, "Hey, why don't you come stay with me, and you can start fresh?" And so that's somebody I didn't know. So then he said to me, "Hey, I might be moving out of state. That might be a good option for you to start
mm.
over and start fresh?" So
That's
yeah,
really
we hadn't
interesting.
talked about what to do about it.
Yeah,
We both felt hopeless.
yeah. And it kind of was just like this easily dismissed idea that a lot of people will be like,
Yeah.
where what? I have all this stuff here. So you were, you had that conversation, and then your landlord was like, "Hey, can you get out in 2 weeks?" And I'm
Yeah.
assuming you made it happen.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I ended up, like I said, I looked on the internet for ways to. So California is different. I've lived in a lot of different places, a lot of different states. And this is the only place I know of that you can like have live-in jobs, where, because rent and mortgage and everything is so expensive that there's a lot of homeless here.
Hmm.
So there's these live-in jobs. Now, I was a licensed nurse for 14 years, and I'm former nurse. I'm not a nurse anymore, but that's the only thing that sort of kept me in my marriages. Sort of kept me, you know, being able to function, something to do and look forward to and have a purpose. But anyway, yeah, so you could do live-in caretaker type jobs where you're like, helping to care for
Hmm.
elderly or special needs people, and or pet sitting. Even, people that would have two homes or other places that they were going for long term, and they would want you to do their stay in their home and do home sitting and pet sitting. Take care of their home and their surroundings in there and the pets, and then also for the elderly. So I did do that. I found a couple different places that I could go, a couple sort of interviews to set up, and I was able to do that. And was able to get off the bus and start a job. And I actually went through a few of them because the first one was a scam kind of a
Mm.
thing. And um, and so after that, and I thought at that time, how could this be happening to me? Like, how could I get into this terrible situation? And, where I was scared for my life, even. And then, so I just got out of there real quick,
Because you knew you could.
Yeah. So
You
I
had
just,
you had practice a little bit before.
yeah. Yeah. So that's, yeah. So I was able to, then I ended up nursing again here because that was the only way I could make a good living and really do some sort of real work where I could get out on my own in that. But
Yeah.
yeah.
What was it like when you sat your butt down in that seat on the bus,
Oh,
like, and you had left everything?
I have a good story about that. I don't know if you know the story. So it's a 3-day ride. Excuse me. So it's a 3-day ride. So I left this husband that was an alcoholic, drug abuser, abused me. I left him. I went down a path of deep depression, high anxiety, get on this bus, sort of last ditch effort. The person that sits next to me has a water bottle and it's not filled with water. They look sort of disheveled and homeless, which, I didn't think anything of that. They sit next to me and I could smell the alcohol. And they're talking and talking and talking. I'm just trying, not even trying to be polite. I'm just like, I'm not saying anything. I'm so numb on that bus ride.
Hmm.
That whole ride, I was really just numb. People say that you were brave or whatever. It's like, no, I just didn't care. I didn't care what happened to me. But so then this person spills their drink on my seat. It's like vodka or something, some
Mm.
clear alcohol, and it stunk really badly. I stand up right away, and they start trying to rub my bottom to get the alcohol to get to, because it was wet. And this is the first day of a 3-day ride. And when we got when we got on the bus, we were told, whatever suitcases you put underneath, don't expect to get that when we stop. The bus driver at the stops is not going to go underneath and get everybody's. You're allowed to bring a carry-on. Well, I had these jeans on. I had like Levi jeans on. I thought I'm going to wear these for the 3 days. I think I had one shirt, another T-shirt or something changed in my purse or my carry-on or whatever. So I had to tell the bus driver at the next stop what happened, and that to me, that was another sort of a big shift. Like, this person wasn't allowed to get back on the bus. You're not allowed to bring alcohol on the bus.
Mm.
And they did get me my suitcase so I could change my clothes. And
Yeah.
I just threw those jeans away. I was like, I'm not just going to roll these up and put them in my suitcase for 3 days under a bus with soaked in alcohol.
Yeah. So you
It,
advocated for yourself. That was like
yes.
you were doing that. You know what's so interesting? That you unveiled that you were a nurse for so long,
Mm,
and your responsibility as a nurse is to care for
yeah.
others, and you were so deep in your space that you weren't able to care for yourself. And it's
Yeah.
so, I feel like it's so common. We
Yeah.
have so much ability to do all these other things, but we can't do for ourselves
Mm-hmm.
until that moment. And so, at what point in your journey did you feel like a human again? Did you, or for the first time, really, right? When did you start like
Whew,
feeling
pro-
like this version of you?
probably just a couple years ago.
Yeah,
When I gave up nursing and I started hypnotherapy, and I actually started painting and still continued with pet sitting. So really, like the pandemic actually is kind of
yeah,
like a really was brought into this space of, I needed to get out of nursing for the longest time. And that was kind of the thing that helped me do it. And I was taking classes for hypnotherapy, and I was able to take clients all over, you know,
right.
virtually all over.
Hmm.
So it didn't really stop that. And then, as soon as the pandemic was, well, not over because it's still not really over, but after 2020, so like 2021, I started doing a lot of pet sitting, helping, because I was making my own schedule with hypnotherapy. And I've always loved pets and pet sitting, and have helped pets in different ways throughout my life. And so that's really taken off. And like I said, painting, having my own space to do my own thing. I'm married again, and I had went through therapy, EMDR therapy. And so just really the last 2 3 years I've really
Really?
come into, I wrote my memoir and published it. And so all these things, and I'm taking classes now still. So I'm really just like growing and learning about myself and expressing myself. And it's really amazing to me. And that's why I decided to publish my memoirs, because it's really amazing to me how I didn't realize so much. I didn't realize so much of my childhood and my life before had kept me from who I am today, or
Hmm.
even knowing this person.
Right.
And I know that people get stuck, and it's so easy to get stuck. Like you've said, sometimes it can be the comfort that I know. So,
Hmm.
um, I just really, it's only been the last few years or so that I've come to know me and who I am. And
Yeah.
yeah.
In what part of your journey were you ready to unpack that early trauma and therapy? I know you said you sought out therapy before,
Yeah.
and that was probably a lot of it was out of desperation and not
Mhm.
necessarily unpacking and
Right.
clearing house in a way. Was there anything that triggered you, like that you were like, I'm ready to face this?
Yeah, I was still having a lot of nightmares, and I
Mm,
was reliving because there was one last sort of physical attack that made me leave my second ex-husband. I had to call the police to get out safely, and that was the last thing that I kept reliving in
mm,
nightmares. And so when I went for therapy, I actually went to my doctor in California. I didn't have a doctor. I went to a doctor, and I said, I need something for this anxiety and these. I was thinking to get medicine,
mm-hmm.
is what I went for. And
It's
so
very
they,
American of us.
right, right. Well, I had tried before, in another
Right.
place, and I kind of, I guess I
Yeah.
forgot that,
Yeah.
I might be able to get therapy. So they then, um, referred me to therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in therapy, I thought, well, I don't know what I'm going to say when I get there. I thought, what am I, like was physically abused, and now I can't sleep. Now what?
Yeah.
I had no idea that, like, the whole childhood, it was just so amazing to me. And I think people need to know that, we say children are resilient, but I think it comes up eventually, or it comes out eventually. Even something, just a divorce alone, I think it's important to make sure that the kids are okay.
Yeah. I think even just normalizing therapy and
Yes,
normalizing, because I think I've had personal conversations with people that I'm like, they're talking about therapy, but they're like, I don't know what I would say. And it's like,
exactly.
well, neither do they. You just go in and
Right.
you they're trained, they have a license to do this, right? And
Right.
so
That's their job, not yours.
exactly.
Yeah.
So you go and you share, and then they're like, well, what? And then I think a lot of people get like, well, I don't want them to know all of it. Like I want to make
Right.
it sound nice or package it nicely. And it's like, well, then you're not ready for therapy. But,
Right.
like we said earlier, I think we're getting to a space in which therapy is a little bit more normalized,
Yeah.
and people are seeking it. I mean, for me, it was interesting because it took me, I mean, you listened to my episode, but it took me 20 something years to, what I would say, unlock that final door of grief with my mom,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
losing my mom. And
Hmm.
what got me was something that seemingly sounded so simple when my fifth therapist told me, because it takes a little bit to find the right one, right? The
That's
one that
right.
you
Yep.
feel comfortable with, and you have to do that work. But she said to me, she said, you realize that every decision that you've made since that day, you've made as the 8-year-old version of you,
Yeah.
out of fear that someone's going to leave you, out of fear that something's going to go wrong, out of fear that you're going to be orphaned, whatever
Hmm.
that may be. And I was like, like I'm 30 something now. Why, like at that point, and I
Yeah.
was like, why didn't I realize any of this?
Right.
And to your
Right.
point, it takes enough confidence and courage in yourself to be vulnerable in that
Yes.
sense. But then what you get from it is so worth it, right?
Yeah. A whole new life. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're reintroduced to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. That therapist that I went to at that time is the one who said the actual words childhood neglect. And I thought, no,
Yeah.
I wasn't neglected, but I was. It was just not an intentional sort. We think of childhood neglect as parents that are, you know, either alcoholics or they leave their kids alone to go gambling or to the bars or just, or whatever it is. I didn't have that. My father was a deadbeat dad before that was even a term. My mother was trying to take care of three girls. She was working all the time. She thought my older sisters were taking care of me. It was it was childhood neglect because I was alone and I didn't have basic needs. But that was the first time I realized. And then she brought up CPTSD, just continued trauma throughout your life. And so all these things was new to me. So yeah, I didn't have to know anything more than my life,
Yeah.
And what's interesting too about, childhood and neglect in that, and I had two older sisters. One was killed in a car accident when she was 18, just before my 14th birthday. But my other sister asked me when I was writing my book, so a few years ago, asked me, weren't you, and these are her words, farmed out? Weren't you farmed out for a while? Like she didn't remember me being around at all. So I guess I hid pretty good. But
Wow.
but she didn't remember that I was even around. So my sisters didn't take care of me. They were supposed to stay with me probably, I don't know, I'm assuming. And
Yeah.
yeah.
It's amazing what someone else can unlock in us, and then how all these dots can start to connect, and you're just like,
Yes.
everything makes sense now. Like you're in this
Yeah.
really, and it's comforting, right? Because then
Yes.
you're not like, why or what, or
Yeah.
wondering these things. So
It
I'm
really
glad.
helps.
Yeah, I'm glad that you've gone through this journey. You can tell in the way that you tell your before story, and the way you
Yeah.
talk about your current life,
Yeah.
and your facial express, like you just seem sit like you're sitting in joy
Yeah.
with what's happened. What's your favorite part of your new life? Like what brings you the most joy right now?
uh, Being able to show others that it's possible to get
Mm,
out of that place, between hypnotherapy and, doing some podcasts with people, as guests, and, in my book, just so many different ways that I'm able to help others to get out of where I was,
Hmm.
that is just just amazing to me. I love, love, love hearing people's stories, and I hope to, help them to, to be able to tell their story and to know they're not alone, and to know it's possible to, come out of that. Even
Yeah.
when you, even later in life, it's possible.
Yeah.
But one
We
one thing
still
I
don't stop living, right?
Right, right. Yeah. And I just love that. I'm still amazed. I'm so hopeful. Like every year since like 2020, I'm like, "Oh, it's been such a great year. I can't wait till the next year." And then the next year is so much better. And then the next year is so much better. It's just like so amazing to me. I am in a place in my life that I would have never, never thought I would be. Never in a million years thought I'd be even feeling the way I do, let alone, writing, becoming a published author, and
Right.
painting things that people want to actually buy, and speaking to people about my whole life story. you know
Yeah.
just never thought I'd be here, or in a truly respectful, loving relationship, a marriage again. um and even in California, who knew? Who knew I'd be here?
Yeah. Well,
So yeah.
it's palpable, the joy and how you feel about this. And to your earlier point, you probably had, I hate to say it, but had to experience
Yeah.
those really low moments
Yeah.
to realize how good things
Right.
are. Even when you have a bad day now, I bet you're still grateful for certain parts of those moments, of that day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing your story. I like to kind of wrap up these calls with a question. And I'm wondering if you could go back to Pamela when your friend suggested California that first time. Is there anything that this version of you, could share with her that would light that fire quicker?
um Anything that would light that fire quicker after my friend said that to me, I would say just go. I mean, don't even think about it, and I think I would say, as far as like advice for her,
Yeah,
is, look deeper into your opportunities when you get there. Um, I might tell her that there's going to be a few more steps, but you're going to be in a place that you cannot even fathom right now,
right.
so there's more than hope on the other side of this. You know, there's much more than just hope on the other side.
Yeah. And I bet that you wish you could go back to the 9-year-old
Oh,
hiding in that laundry and just give her a big old hug.
yeah, yeah. I've done some inner child work and meditations with for inner child, and it surprised me. That's the thing. That's the thing. She just needed a big hug and to know she
Yeah.
wasn't alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that it serves the purpose, and kind of the reason that I have the life shift is, for so long I felt like I was the only one that had ever lost a mother, and
Right.
I knew logically that I wasn't. But when you're in these moments, you feel like no one else can possibly be in this spot. And so
Right.
I appreciate that you just came on and shared this really deep, dark part of your life,
Yeah.
and how you were able to find the light a little bit at a time, and now you're just
Yeah.
living in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Of
Yeah, the
course.
the podcast is amazing. I love, love, love hearing these people's stories. I just can't get enough of it. Yeah, it's great.
Well,
People are
thank you.
amazing.
Yeah, and you know what, I think it's interesting too, because people may hear your story, and although they didn't experience the same exact moments,
Right.
something that you say will stick with them, right? And
Right.
that will make them think about something in a different way, or perhaps they know someone that was like you,
Yeah.
right? And they tell them they should go to California,
Yeah.
like,
Right.
maybe not that exactly, but we
Yeah.
never know how our story is going to affect other people.
Right.
And even if they're not in a similar position as
Right.
us. So I
Right.
appreciate you taking this time and being a part of the Life Shift podcast. It just fills my cup every day, every time I have
Yes.
these
Yes.
conversations.
Yes.
So
Thank
thank you. We
you.
will share the links to your book and some of your contact information in the show notes. So if anyone
Thank you.
listening wants to connect with you, they can do that. And for those of you listening, if you're enjoying the Life Shift podcast, please take a moment to rate and review. I would be so grateful. I don't know if it does anything, but make my day a little bit better. So thank you for being a part of this. And we will see you next week on the Life Shift podcast.